Welcome all. Top 5 Essential Facts about the Coronavirus, the only article you'll ever need about COVID-19. 1. COVID-19 is a coronavirus, which means very little to most people who don't work in virology or immunology. A coronavirus is a group of viruses that can infect mammals and birds. In humans, they can cause respiratory tract infections, many of which can be treated with over-the-counter medication. The so-called common cold is the result of a coronavirus, and while most are well understood and rarely more than an inconvenience, some can be lethal. COVID-19 refers to the outbreak of the disease, which is broken down as coronavirus disease 2019. The virus itself also has a name, but it's a bit of a mouthful: severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus 2, or SARS-CoV-2. Part of that acronym may be familiar, seeing as the world already went through a similar outbreak of SARS in 2003. The viruses are related, and it wouldn't be out of the question to call this new outbreak SARS 2.0, though you likely won't hear any professional virologists say that in the media. Regardless, COVID-19 is a coronavirus, and it is spreading, but that's not a cause for alarm. Rather, it's a cause to prepare and protect ourselves in much the same way we do when it's cold and flu season. 2. Where COVID-19 originated. It's well known that the virus was first seen in Wuhan, China, but it's not fully understood exactly where it originated. COVID-19 is likely a zoonotic virus, which means it can be transmitted between animals and people. This has led researchers to look for animals that might have originally carried the disease. There are a lot of similarities between COVID-19 and two bat-derived strains of Beta coronavirus, which means they are likely related. Because the viruses share about 96% of the same genes, it was initially believed that bats were the source of the outbreak, which was pinpointed to the Huanan seafood market, where exotic animals are sold. As time went on, and more research was conducted, Chinese researchers were able to determine that COVID-19 shared 99% of the same genetic information as a similar virus that infects pangolins. This suggested that pangolins may have been an intermediary host for the virus, but the research wasn't officially published, and much of the analysis remains unconfirmed. While determining the precise origin might help virologists better understand COVID-19, doing so isn't entirely necessary in combating the spread of the disease, now that it's been released into the human population. 3. How COVID-19 is transmitted. Since the first day the world learned about the Wuhan coronavirus, the fear of it spreading began to rise. How was it transmitted, and what could be done to limit its transmission? People have always feared Ebola, but that's far harder to catch than something like a coronavirus, and it's all about what it infects and how it is transmitted. COVID-19 causes a respiratory infection, and it's through a person's respiration that it spreads the easiest. There are two known means by which the virus spreads: person to person and through contact with infected surfaces. In a person-to-person situation, the virus can be spread through close contact, which is generally considered to be a distance of 6 feet. The way a person can pass it on is through respiratory droplets, which are produced when a person coughs or sneezes. Covering one's mouth when this happens helps alleviate the spread of the disease, and infected people should wear a face mask to reduce the risk of transmitting it to someone else. But please heed the Surgeon General's warning and don't buy a mask unless you need one. The other way it is spread is through a surface contaminated with the virus. A countertop could have been in the pathway of a sneeze, which carried COVID-19 to its surface. Touching that, and then touching your mouth, nose, and possibly the eyes can result in infection. 4. How COVID-19 is detected or confirmed. One of the biggest issues with detecting COVID-19 in a patient is that it presents much like the common cold. To combat this, researchers across the globe have been scrambling to come up with a way to test for the presence of the virus, and this has resulted in several different testing methods. One of the best ways to check for the virus isn't to see if you can find the virus in a person's body, it's to find the antibodies the body produces to fight the infection. The tests that look for antibodies are called serological tests, and a firm in Singapore may have perfected a means of conducting this type of test to find COVID-19. Antibody tests are probably the fastest and easiest way of detecting the presence of COVID-19, but it isn't the only way. There are tests currently being used around the world, which look for the virus genetic information in a person's saliva, mouth, nose, and anus. These tests use the polymerase chain reaction, PCR, method, which is a process in molecular biology that rapidly produces billions of copies of DNA for study. While these tests can detect the presence of COVID-19, they cannot identify people who were infected and ultimately cleared of it. 5. What are the symptoms of COVID-19? The first part of this block is going to list the symptoms associated with COVID-19 that shouldn't scare anyone, but the last bit will be all about the more dangerous aspects of the disease. Don't be alarmed, as these are the worst case symptoms that won't affect most people who are infected. The most common symptoms of COVID-19 are fever, coughing, and shortness of breath. These are the same symptoms most people get from the common cold, but they are the mildest possible symptoms a person can experience. For those who are under a greater deal of risk due to a compromised immune system, or meet the criteria previously mentioned, symptoms can become far more severe. COVID-19 can increase the chances of contracting pneumonia, it can cause multiple organ failure, and in some cases, it can result in death. These are the most severe cases, though all are of concern due to the ease by which it can be transmitted from person to person.